one day somebody does something unspeakable to someone else, to someone you hardly knew, and you do something about it because you can.
This story is brought to us from the Washington Post, and they're still convicting people from the January 6, 2021 rush on the U.S. Capitol. Yeah, Maryland man who threw rock-like objects and a smoke bomb at police officers during the January 6, 2021 attack at the U.S. Capitol went on to briefly work as a police officer himself in Montgomery County, and he was sentenced last Friday to 18 months in prison. In imposing the penalty, U.S. District Judge Trevor J. McFadden said Justin Lee's acts were cowardly on January 6th, but he praised as heroic Lee's actions about a year and a half later when authorities say he fatally shot a knife-wielding 19-year-old man suspected of stabbing multiple people at a shopping center in Aspen Hill. Quote, "You know better than most people how wrong assaults on police officers are." But McFadden said he hoped Lee could emerge from prison as the person he was on July 22nd, 23. When he shot and killed the stabbing suspect in an act the judge termed the best of public service. Now, Lee of Rockville was 23 years old at the time of the riot. He was found guilty at a bench trial in August of attacking police officers defending a tunnel entrance to the U.S. Capitol from a mob trying to force its way through from the lower West Terrace. Now, at his trial, Lee testified how he grew angry at how officers were treating Donald Trump supporters and was trying to have his voice heard on police brutality. McFadden, a former police officer himself, said that was untrue and found Lee guilty of impeding police, civil disorder, and other misdemeanor charges. Lee applied to join the Montgomery County Police in July of 2021 and was hired in January of 2022, but suspended without pay upon his arrest in October of 2023. He was not identified as a suspect in the Capitol breach investigation at the time he was hired, according to police, but he was fired last month, Montgomery County Police said Friday. McFadden acknowledged an argument by Lee's attorney Terrell N. Roberts III, who asked for probation that Lee faces serious risk and harsh conditions in prison as a former police officer, especially given the likelihood it will become known he shot and killed a criminal suspect. The shooting was deemed justified by the Maryland Attorney General's office. And in a separate January 6 case on Friday, a Washington state man who told a D.C. judge, "You can give me 100 years and I would do it all over again," at his first sentencing in January, received a 5-year prison term at his resentencing. Mark A. Brew, 44, of Vancouver, Washington, was a member of the far-right Proud Boys and marched with them to the Capitol on January 6. Photos and videos introduced at trial showed that Brew was among the first wave of rioters who overran the police perimeter at the Peace Circle. He then spent 2 hours yelling and pushing with officers at the Capitol and entered the building and took selfies of himself on the Senate floor after it was evacuated during the insurrection. At his one-day trial in October of 2023, Brew was convicted by Chief U.S. District Judge James E. Boasberg of felony civil disorder, obstruction of an official proceeding, and 5 misdemeanors. Boasberg imposed a 6-year sentence, but acknowledged that the obstruction charge could be invalidated by a pending Supreme Court case and said he would still issue the same sentence if that happened. The charge was invalidated in most January 6 cases by the Supreme Court and dismissed by prosecutors in Brew's case, setting the stage for Friday's resentencing, which he got 5 years. At his first sentencing, Brew called the judge a clown and derided him as presiding over a kangaroo court. Oh my God, was JC News in court? This time, Brew said in a court filing that he would remain mute. Boasberg referenced Brew's earlier comments, but ultimately lowered the sentence to 5 years, noting that sentencing guidelines now only called for a term between 18 and 24 months. Then Brew spoke up. I think that it was a political act, apparently referring to the insurrection. It was sincere as to the integrity of this country. He noted that he had been in 12 different facilities since his arrest, and it is an eye-opener to the conditions and the realities that lie within the walls. So really, putting me in that system longer, it is not much of a deterrent because I'm in it. And I see what's going on in the system. Boasberg told him, Mr. Brew, when you're released, I hope you will seek to make a positive contribution to your community. But I haven't seen that so far. So in this story, we get two people who were convicted. Lee, convicted 18 months. Brew, resentenced and given 5 years. Lee, hired as a police officer right after that January 6th thing, in July of that year. Or not, he wasn't hired until January, but he applied in July. And he got 18 months. Former cop. So he's fired now. But, I just wanted to give you this story because here it is coming up on 4 years later, almost 4 years after that all happened at the Capitol. Trump's back in office coming up in January, and they're still convicting people from that. So does anybody watching agree with this Brew guy? Spelled BRU, by the way. But does anybody agree with him that it's all just political? That the integrity of this country is in question? Or do you think, you know what? You committed a crime, dude. Nothing political about it. Let me hear your opinions.